Looking for a process to start screen printing at home that's easy to set up? Hey, it's Jennifer with Pigskins and Pigtails. On my channel, I teach all about screen printing from my home craft room. You'll usually see me teaching a process where I use a vinyl cutter to create the stencils for screen printing. This is a shortcut to traditional screen printing methods where the setup is a little more involved. Today I want to share another method with you that is also a shortcut to the traditional screen printing process. If you don't have a vinyl cutter, or maybe your design is a little too complex to cut and weed using vinyl, Speedball has a product called Speed Screens. These are sheets that are pre-coated with emulsion, so you can skip right into printing and exposing your design, which I'm going to explain how to do in this video. The Speed Screens come in this black resealable bag, but don't open the bag just yet. These sheets are light sensitive, so we want to get everything set up first. Once you create your screens, they can be used by taping them directly on your shirt, but I'm going to show you how to go a step further and get better, more consistent results with your home screen printing setup. In this video, I'm going to show you how to put your speed screen inside a frame like this, and then we're going to take it even a step further, and I'm going to show you how you can use my screen printing press to make lining up the design on your shirts even more accurate.
I'm going to be using the larger 12.5 by 16.5 size speed screens, which fit perfectly inside a 10 by 14 frame. For this method, you want to use an 8.5 by 11 transparency so that your design will fit in this frame. For the 10 by 12 speed screens, you'll need to make your design smaller if you want it to fit inside of an 8 by 10 frame. In Photoshop, I'm going to create an 8.5 by 11 document and bring in my design. You'll want to make sure that your design is scaled to fit inside the document. If your design isn't black, you'll want to add a black cover overlay to make sure it prints with black ink only. Next, we want to mirror or flip the design. And we can send it to our printer. I'm using a Canon inkjet printer, but most home printers will work for this.
Next, we need to set up our UV light. This one is from Speedball, and they recommend the light be 19 inches over your 12.5 by 16.5 size speed screens. You can measure this and hold it by hand, but if you want to be a little more accurate and hands-free, I created this simple box out of foam board. You can download my free instructions that include the measurements and how I put this together by going to the link below. This cutout in the top of my box will hold my light at 19 inches and the film will sit below.
Having a special setup like this or a dark room is not required, but I did close the blinds on my windows for this next step. Take out one piece of film and peel off the carrier sheet. Hang on to this carrier sheet because it's great to keep to give the screen rigidity during the drying phase. The shiny side needs to remain face up. Next, we want to place our transparency design in the center of the screen. To do this, I'm going to place my ruler 2 3/4 inches up from the bottom, and I've also centered my ruler with the film. Now I can line up the bottom of the transparency with the edge of the ruler. And to make sure it's centered, I'm looking at the center star to make sure it lines up with the center of my ruler. To make sure our design fits inside of our frame, we need to make sure that this is centered. Now I'm going to place this in my box. The base of my box has a black foam board. If you're working on a table, you'll want to put a piece of black cardstock or paper under your speed screen. Then place the clear sheet that came with the speed screens on top of the transparency. This ensures even exposure across the screen. Now we're ready to turn on the UV light for 2 minutes. For the larger speed screens, Speedball recommends your UV light be 19 inches above for 2 minutes. For the smaller speed screens, you'll want your light 14 inches above and exposed for 1 minute. When the time is up, turn off the light, and I'm going to take just the red speed screen sheet to the sink. In the sink, I've got one of my screen printing frames propped up, and I'm going to place the speed screen on top. You want your screen to stay vertical while you're washing it out. Using hot water and the sprayer attachment on your sink or hose, spray all over the screen. We're going to continue washing just this side of the screen. You don't need to flip it over. You'll start to see your design appearing. You want to be careful though, the red emulsion gets soft quickly. If you go too long in any one area, it may start to do this where you lose part of the design. In my second attempt, I made sure not to hold the sprayer in one area too long, and it turned out much better. I did lose my little R in my registration mark, so I'll end up covering that up once the screen dries. Straight from the sink, I'm putting this on a paper towel and carefully blotting it to get some of the water off. Then I'm going to leave it out to dry for 30 minutes to an hour. With the speed screen completely dry, there's another important step. Place it back under the light, and we're going to expose it again for the same time as before. This post-exposure is going to help make the screen more durable so it can be washed and reused. Now we can put the speed screen inside a 10 by 14 frame. Take your frame and center it on top of your design. Once you have it centered, hold onto the screen and frame and flip it over. Next, place a push pin in each corner. This is going to hold the screen in place. Next, grab your cording, and we're going to start working this into the groove of the frame. I'm using a screen rolling tool for this, and I'm going to use it to mash that cording into the frame. You have to press pretty hard to get it started, and then work your way down one of the short ends and one of the long ends first. And as you work the cording into the next two sides, you want to pull the screen to get it nice and tight. I'm pulling with one hand as I press the cording in with the other. This part may take a little practice, but it's important that you're getting the mesh pulled extremely tight in your frame. Once you have all the cording in place, check the tension to make sure the screen is not loose anywhere. You can pull the cording out and fix it if you need to. If you have any excess screen or cording, you can trim that off. Now we can use this to screen print. You can place the screen directly on your fabric like this, but as you can tell, it can get a little tricky to line it up accurately on the shirt.
If you plan to do a lot of screen printing at home, this is my Pigskins and Pigtails screen printing press, and it allows us to line up the screen and shirts more accurately. To do this, place your screen inside the clamp, and then you'll lower it down.
Now I'm going to look for that center point in my design, the star, and I'm going to line that up with the center line I've drawn on my press. Once you have it lined up, tighten down the clamps to hold the screen in place. Now when we add our t-shirts, we know that the screen is going to come down centered on the shirt. Let's grab some screen printing ink and I'll show you how it works. I'm using Speedball Flex ink for this project. With the thin lines in my design, I want an ink that's going to stretch with the fabric, which is exactly what Flex ink does. I want a color that will match my branding, so I'm mixing up a turquoise color. You can download my ink recipe guide linked below. In this guide, I share the recipes to get 42 new colors with the Flex ink line. Now let's use this ink to screen print. I'm spreading a generous scoop of turquoise ink along the bottom of my screen. I'm going to use this 9-inch squeegee held at about a 45-degree angle, and with firm pressure, I'm going to pull that ink towards me over the screen. Lift the screen and check out the detail of these thin lines. We can easily print more of these shirts by simply adding our next shirt and repeating the process. One of the nice parts about using a press like this is that you can lift the screen and check to see how it looks. If you need to add more ink, just lower the screen back down and it's going to line up in the exact same spot so you can add another coat of ink. With my shirt centered on the press and the speed screen centered in the screen, I know my design is going to print accurately shirt after shirt. And just like that, I've printed 10 shirts using my speed screen in just a few minutes. I'm going to leave these to dry overnight and go wash my screen. The ink washes out using warm water. And once this dries, you can use it again. Once your ink is dry, the final step is to heat press the shirts. Heat setting with a heat press or iron is going to cure this ink and make it permanent on the shirt so that it doesn't fade or come off in the wash.
These speed screens are a great way to get started screen printing at home with just a printer. With this design, I really pushed the limits on how detailed of a design you can get with the speed screens, and I'm really impressed with the results.
This is something I would have had trouble doing with my vinyl method because it can be tricky to get very thin lines to cut properly, and trying to keep those tiny detail pieces in place when you're weeding the vinyl would have taken forever.
For more info on all the products I use, check out the links below. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for more screen printing tips and tutorial videos. And if you're excited about this process, here's another video I think you might like watching. Happy printing!